Hello to Pioneer viewers. As you know, our agenda is the Russia-Ukraine war. New news about the war continues to come from the front line. As a result of the developments in the war process, surprising situations arise. The strategic moves made by the states when deciding to wage war and during in the war draw a plan for the future. If political decision-making mechanisms do not work well in the war processes of states, crises arise. International politics and diplomacy can be a good way to resolve crises, but the real effective force of the war is the activities on the front line. Soldiers need to be motivated and made to feel valued by providing them with the good opportunities. If the state fails to show that it cares about its own soldiers fighting on the front line, there will be a great loss of morale in the military units. The loss of morale also negatively affects the war power. In this case, the other side will have an important advantage factor. Interconnected processes have a decisive effort on the outcome of wars. Therefore, the political mechanism should make plans by evaluating every possibility in every condition. Following Russia's invasion attempts against Ukraine, many developments took place on the front line. These developments had a decisive impact on the Ukrainian army and the Russian army. The Ukrainian army, which has shown a strong resistance since the first days of the war, is currently in both offensive and defensive positions. The Russian army, on the other hand, lost some of the Ukrainian territories it occupied after the first days of offensive. There are many reasons why the Russian army lost its gains. However, Russia, which was initially aggressive, especially in the Crimea region and the Black Sea, is now retreating. As a result of the effective attacks of the Ukrainian army, the Russian Navy had a hard time, especially in Crimea and off the Black Sea. Therefore, the Russian Navy has retreated inland. The withdrawal of the Russian Navy to the safe zone was not enough to eliminate the danger. With the inclusion of the fighter jets in the inventory, the Ukrainian army can attack Russian targets regardless of whether they are near or far. A new scandal in the Russian army is keeping the agenda very busy. Now, if you're ready, let's examine the latest developments together. As the Pioneer, we continue to report on Russia-Ukraine war. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so that you don't miss our daily map reports and reports on the agenda. I also read all your comments on our videos. Please continue to share your ideas about our content in the comments. Let's start if you are ready. The Pioneer reports. The news that emerged in the past days shocked the audiences. The images shared by a soldier serving in the Russian army were watched by thousands of people in a short time. People who watched the video expressed their reactions to the situation. In the shared video, the soldier was actually shouting and explaining his reactions to the Russian army. There were claims that the Russian soldiers who died on the front line were not removed from the trenches. However, it was recently announced that the Russian soldiers who lost their lives were collected. After this announcement, the soldiers who shot the video showed that this was not the case. In the video shared by the soldier, who stated that he was attached to the 41st Brigade, 2 lifeless Russian soldiers are seen. According to the statements of the soldier who shot the video, more are laying in the trench. The indifference of the Russian army towards the soldiers on the front line draws the reactions of soldiers. The images shared from the front prove that the Russian army is almost ineffective in terms of supply and logistics. In the war that has been going on for a long time, the Russian army cannot solve the problems. Unresolved problems are starting to grow. Russian commanders who have difficulty in dealing with the problems either resign or send reports to Moscow continuing fake news. It is observed that the Ukrainian army has been acting on the strategy it has determined since the first days of the war. The Ukrainian army's attacks targeting strategic Russian points, and especially its attacks in Crimea region, caused a great destruction for the Russian army. The problems faced by the Russian army have not been solved since the Ukrainian launched a counterattacks. The Russian army, which deployed its navy in the region to hold the Crimean region, was first to withdraw its navy after the Ukrainian attacks. The news that has emerged in recent days shows that the Russian navy will be in danger again in the coming days. The Ukrainian army's increasing power and presence in the region has caused concern in the Russian army. As Russia prepares to shift some of its forces eastward in the Black Sea, moving away from the Ukrainian coast may not be enough to protect the Black Sea fleet from the looming threats of Ukrainian F-16s. Satellite images have suggested that Russia may be preparing for a new Black Sea naval base in the Bakway region, largely considered part of Georgia. Earlier this year, regional leader Aslan Bajania said Russia would establish a new naval base in the breakaway region. All this aims to increase the defense capacity of both Russia and Abkhazia, Bajania said. The new facilities in Abkhazia also provides information about the fate of Russia's Black Sea Fleet, which is headquartered in Crimea but has been drawn eastward by frequent Ukrainian attacks on the annexed Crimean Peninsula. News of the new base in Abkhazia has sparked concerns that Moscow could expand the war in Ukraine and draw Georgia into the conflict. Tbilisi hopes to join the European Union, which supports Kyiv's efforts to resist the Kremlin. This further limits Georgia's political room for maneuver. The Kremlin has moved some assets from Crimea to the Novorossiysk base in Russia's Krasnodar region. A naval base in Achimchir would put Russia's fleet much further from the Ukrainian coast and safer from attacks. Throughout the war, the Ukrainian army carried out several attacks targeting the Crimean Peninsula and its surroundings. The aim of the Ukrainian attacks was to disturb the logistics network of the Russian army and force the Russian occupation troops in Crimea to withdraw. Georgian politicians have downed plans for the Russian naval base in Amchachir as a direct threat to Tbilisi and its aspirations to join the European Union. Such actions represent a gross violation of Georgia's sovereignty and territorial integrity, the Tbilisi Foreign Ministry said. But preparations for a base in Abkhazia have not jeopardized Georgia's EU accession process for now, as the country was granted candidate status earlier this week. Russia's regional power ambitions also shaped its relations with the countries around it. Moscow's sphere of influence is not recognized by many countries. The foreign policy moves and goals of the countries in the region contradicts Russia's interests. For this reason, Russia is making moves to bring countries into its sphere of influence. What do you think about the scandalous images shared by the Russian soldier? How do you think the failed moves of the Russian army affect the war process? How do you interpret the Ukrainian army's moves? What do you think about the Russia's attempt to establish a naval base in Georgian region? Do you think Russia can maintain its claims to regional power? We care about your views. Please share it with us.